It was a quiet autumn afternoon at Danvers High School. The air carried the smell of fresh pencils and fallen leaves, the kind of day when laughter echoed through tiled hallways and lockers slammed shut in rhythm with the final bell. Students poured out, shouting goodbyes, tossing books into backpacks, planning rides home. In the middle of it all stood one teacher, Colleen Ritzer, 24 years old, bright, kind, the type who wrote little notes in pink ink to remind her students they mattered. Her classroom walls were covered in photos of sunsets, math jokes, and small dreams pinned between them. She believed in patience, in gentleness, in second chances. And that afternoon, she stayed back a little longer, helping a quiet new student gather his things. His name was Philip Chisholm, tall, soft-spoken, a 14-year-old freshman who had just moved from Tennessee. Teachers saw brilliance in his calm, classmates saw distance in his silence. He loved soccer, math, and sketching in his notebook, but lately, those sketches had grown darker, the smiles had faded, and something unspoken sat heavy behind his quiet eyes. No one thought much of it. Colleen smiled at him before leaving, her voice warm, almost maternal. "Have a good night, Philip." The door closed. The hallway fell silent. And that simple exchange, that one gentle moment, would mark the last time anyone saw her alive. Evening fell over Danvers High School on October 22, 2013. The last bell had rung, lockers clicked shut, and the halls emptied into the lengthening shadows of late autumn. Outside, the car of mathematics teacher Colleen Ritzer sat unattended in the school parking lot, her keys in the ignition, her bag still inside. Inside the building, classmates texted, "Are you coming down? Need help?" Her phone stayed silent. Her friends and colleagues expected her to leave with the day's goodness. Instead, concern rippled quickly. Later, her parents called the school. The campus, so full of routine mere hours ago, now felt deserted and exposed. Custodial lights hummed in quiet stairwells. A janitor passed the girls' bathroom on the second floor and noticed the door closed. The intercom cut through the hush, "If anyone has seen Ms. Ritzer, please report to the office immediately." The words felt strange, wrong. Inside the bathroom, a student testified she opened the door around 3:14 p.m. and saw a dark-skinned person's bare buttocks near the sinks. She hurried out believing someone was changing. Investigators later reviewed surveillance footage. At approximately 3:16 p.m., 14-year-old Philip Chisholm, a freshman who'd recently moved from Tennessee, was seen dragging a large blue rolling recycling bin down the stairwell from the second floor. A teammate testified he asked Chisholm what he was doing. Chisholm replied simply, "Nothing," and promised to meet him for soccer practice. The tip of the bin was stained, his hands bore red marks, his hood pulled low. When detectives followed the path the bin took, it led to a wooded clearing behind the school, where early the next morning, the body of Colleen Ritzer was found. That evening, a small New England town realized the sanctuary of its high school had been broken. A teacher, bright, compassionate, just 24 years old, was gone. A student, once seen as unremarkable, was now under suspicion. And the quiet parking lot, the untouched car, the recycling bin in the shadows, they all spoke of a disruption of ordinary life. As midnight approached, the first detectives arrived at the scene. And as they shone flashlights over the forest floor, the community braced for the truth. Evening had deepened into the stillness of late October at Danvers High School. Inside, the security monitors began replaying the last safe moments of the day, each hallway, each doorway meticulously logged by investigators. At 3:18 p.m., surveillance captured Philip Chisholm leaving the second-floor girls' bathroom, a red backpack slung over one shoulder, his sweatshirt changed, his expression unreadable. According to prosecutors, the bathroom was locked from the inside, and within minutes, his teacher, Colleen Ritzer, disappeared without a trace. Detectives retraced her steps, the classroom from 1 p.m. to 1:55 p.m., the extra help session, her conversation with Philip about his move from Tennessee, the overhead intercom, and the janitor's check of the girls' restroom around 3:30 p.m. She had been seen stepping into the bathroom at 3:02 p.m., and no one saw her come out. The footage shows Philip exiting different clothes at 3:18 p.m. and a large recycling bin being moved soon after. Overnight, investigators searched Philip's backpack, found items belonging to Colleen, her credit card and phone among them. The taillight of her car remained off in the parking lot. The rigid sequence of doors, surveillance frames, and timestamps told them this was far from random. In interrogations, Philip sat mostly silent. At 2:30 a.m. on October 23, 2013, at the police station in Danvers, surrounded by officers and his mother, he admitted murder. "I killed her," he said simply. One detective later recalled, "He didn't cry. He didn't look away. He said it was like it was math problem solved." The voice of his defense attorney differed. "Philip is severely mentally ill. He didn't know what he was doing," she told the jury. The prosecution countered that Philip came prepared, with gloves, a box cutter, and a mask. "He knew what he did," lead prosecutor Kate McDougal told jurors, "and he did it anyway." As the forensic teams layered the evidence, cell phones pinging, the recycling bins wheel marks, blood traces on clothing and in the woods, it became clear, this was planned. Not opportunistic. The jury heard the term deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty, as the statute required. By the end of the week, one question weighed heavier than, did he? The question became, why? And as those words hung in the courtroom, the lights in the forest behind the school went out, and investigators realized the truth they had unearthed was far larger than any one moment. Even before dawn on the morning of October 23, 2013, officers from the Danvers Police Department and the Essex County District Attorney's Office were already scouring the cold pavement of U.S. Route 1 in Danvers, Massachusetts. They located 14-year-old Philip Chisholm walking along the roadside, his sweatshirt stained dark, a knife tucked into his pants. The streetlights glowed pale overhead, and he looked, as one officer later described, empty, staring straight ahead. The discovery sent a ripple through the investigation. This was the same student whose teacher had vanished hours earlier. During his initial interview at the station, Chisholm's story shifted. First he claimed innocence. "I didn't do anything wrong," he told investigators. Then he fell silent, his face blank, giving no explanation or defense. A detective pressed him again, "Why did your sweatshirt match the time stamp on the footage?" Chisholm didn't answer. That silence became a clue, one that spoke louder than any words. Peers and teachers soon came forward with their own memories. One teammate said, "He quit soccer suddenly in September. I stayed after classes alone. He told me once, 'I'm always thinking about what if.'" A teacher recalled that Chisholm's doodling had shifted in the weeks before. The well-drawn football diagrams replaced by chaotic razor-like sketches of broken glass and dark hallway figures. His behavior didn't scream danger at first glance, but in hindsight the changes were unmistakable. Psychologists who later reviewed his history cited a striking combination: intense rage, recurring fantasy of violence, and signs of serious mental illness. Expert testimony during his trial noted that although Chisholm wasn't formally diagnosed with schizophrenia, he exhibited auditory hallucinations and delusional thinking. His defense argued these factors impaired his judgment. The prosecution insisted he acted with full intent. And the danger kept unfolding. On June 2, 2014, while awaiting trial and held at a youth detention facility in Dorchester, Chisholm followed a 29-year-old female clinician into a locked bathroom area. Prosecutors say he removed his sandals to muffle his footsteps, then attacked her, choking her and shouting, "I'm gonna kill them all." The woman later wrote in a victim impact statement, "His face still haunts me, that lack of any emotion, just ready to kill." For the community of Danvers, this sequence marked a terrifying truth: the threat wasn't over. The suspect, once seen as a quiet freshman, had shown he could strike again. The question no longer was whether he posed a risk, it was how far he was willing to go. As investigators lined up the facts and professionals assessed his mental state, the town braced for the next revelation. And as that chapter closed, a new question rose: could anyone feel safe again? In the packed courtroom of the Essex County Superior Court on Tuesday, December 14, 2015, the benches were filled with people who came seeking answers. On one side sat the family of Colleen Ritzer, her mother holding the hand of her father, their fingers entwined in silent grief. On the other side, Philip Chisholm, now 16, sat motionless, his face a mask of stillness as the verdicts were read. The judge's voice echoed, guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. The defense lawyer, Denise Reagan, rose to address the court. My client was a child in crisis, suffering from severe mental illness, she said. The prosecution's lead, Assistant District Attorney Kate McDougall, held up the box cutter used in the crime and responded, this was methodical. He brought what he needed. He knew what he was doing. In their closing arguments, the sides stood worlds apart, one urging empathy, the other insisting on accountability. The jurors had heard the conflicting voices, and now the verdicts had spoken. During the victim impact phase, Colleen's mother, Peggy Ritzer, rose to speak. Her voice cracked as she said, there's no number that brings her back. There's no sentence long enough to erase what he did. Her words filled the room, heavier than any legal statute. The community felt the weight of her truth, grief, loss, and a longing for justice. Shortly after the verdict, on June 3, 2016, Judge David Lowy handed down the sentence, life in prison with parole eligibility after 40 years for the rape and robbery counts, and life with parole after 25 years for the murder count. Because the sentences run concurrently, Chisholm cannot apply for parole until around age 54. As order returned to the room, the silence lingered. Colleen's parents rose and walked out together, united in sorrow, yet more alone than ever. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked them if they felt closure. They answered simply, we feel nothing ends today. And while the law had spoken, the question reverberating through Danvers was not if justice had been served, but how the town would heal with the memory of that day. Evening light faded over the campus of Danvers High School, the same building still humming with memories of one ordinary teacher's last day. Across the parking lot, flickering candles glowed outside the front entrance as students and community members gathered in quiet vigil. Tied to lampposts were pink ribbons, a soft statement of remembrance for Colleen Ritzer, 24, whose classroom door bore one of the final smiles she gave before the world shifted. In the hush, you could feel that this school was no longer the same place of routine, laughter and homework. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, lighting candles and whispering prayers in the autumn chill. Soon the movement called Kindness for Colleen took root. High school students carried out small acts of goodwill, helping friends with homework, leaving encouraging notes in lockers, and telling teachers they appreciated them just as Colleen often had. A junior varsity soccer player said, "We lost someone who believed in us. Now we try to live up to that." Teachers found themselves accepting hugs from students who recalled how Colleen used to leave pink ink messages on tests, "You've got this." Within weeks, the corridors that once echoed with the fear after her disappearance began to carry something slightly different, a sense of purpose. But grief and fear lingered. Faculty meetings turned into heart-to-heart conversations about how to keep students safe, how to carry on in normal subjects while carrying an abnormal pain. Parents of freshmen asked new questions. What if my child stays after school? Who watches the bathrooms? Could we ferry our teens safely into adulthood? In Danvers, the ordinary questions of parenting had grown heavier. A mother of two said quietly, "We used to worry about exams, now we worry about trust." Meanwhile, within the walls of the Massachusetts legal system, Philip Chisholm's defense filed appeal papers asking the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts to reconsider the exclusion of brain scan evidence showing structural MRI abnormalities. His attorneys argued that the trial judge improperly barred expert testimony about these scans, which might have supported a psychotic episode defense. The court disagreed. In a ruling issued February 25, 2025, the court affirmed the conviction and denied a new trial, saying that the evidence did not warrant overturning the jury's decision. Today, Colleen's classroom remains untouched, a quiet tribute. A faded pink notebook sits on the corner of the teacher's desk, one chair pulled out exactly as it was on that last day. Her shoes, her mother once said, are still by the door. We never moved them. In that room, the echo of her voice lingers, remember you matter. Fame fades. Kindness lasts forever.